Mira Murati, the former CTO of OpenAI and one of the key architects behind ChatGPT, just raised a jaw-dropping $2 billion seed round. Her startup is Thinking Machines Lab. The deal pegs the company's valuation at a massive 10 billion with the B again dollars, making it one of the largest, if not the largest, seed round in tech history. And here's the kicker. We don't know what the company does or what it's building. There's no products, there's no users, but that has not stopped big name investors like Andreessen Horowitz and Conviction Partners from jumping in, drawn by obviously Murati's track record and what's supposedly a very high caliber team that she's assembled many of them fellow OpenAI alumni. She quietly left last fall after raising concerns publicly about Sam Altman's leadership as CEO. And she even briefly served as interim CEO during the whole drama with Sam and the board and Microsoft and the whole thing. But now she's clearly full steam ahead on some ambitious something, I'm sure. Annie, what do you think?
Obviously, at first blush, it's insane, right? Like, you never see a seed round like this, but I was trying to think about, like, why as an investor would you do something this crazy? And I'm thinking, you're really betting on talent in a seed round more than product. And to attract top talent, they gotta compete with, Zuckerberg's nine-figure salaries for his top talent. So maybe this is the new normal for, AI-based seed rounds. They just have to be giant to actually have a chance.
Seed rounds, almost all venture investing is never really an accurate reflection of what anybody thinks the company is worth. You either think the company is not worth 10 billion today. You know that. It's either worth nothing or it's worth 100 billion or 500 billion. And so you're making a probability based bet that they're going to get to some massive outcome. So I think I have trouble understanding these numbers because I am not so much a believer that there will be a super intelligence moment at which some company will become worth more than Google or Meta or whatever in the $1 trillion club and therefore able to make like a 10x money on money return for a seed investor. But there are those who do believe that somebody will get there first and whoever does will reap tremendous rewards. And if you believe that, this maybe isn't so irrational. I have trouble wrapping my around it. I'm not quite there where I think one company will really end up owning a lot of this value that's created. So maybe that's the disconnect.
Your point is right that it's like somebody might get there or not. And the reality about most seed rounds is like there's somewhere between weak and moderate correlation between seed round size and overall company outcome. So the idea of pouring this volume of dollars into a seed round, it is mind-boggling.
To your point, if you want to hire the top talent, and there's not that much top talent who really knows these models in depth, and they're very expensive now, and if you want to have the money to buy the GPUs and run the compute level that you need to train a cutting edge model, you need billions of dollars, even at the seed round stage. XAI proved you could turn money into pretty good models, but it did take a lot of money. And so I guess some folks believe Mira Murati is the one to turn it into something valuable, not just a model, but a business that can be worth that kind of money. But I suppose we shall have to wait and see. While thinking machines is still under wraps, at least what they're doing, DeepMind is giving us a clearer view of where physical AI tech is headed. DeepMind just dropped a pretty big update. They've introduced something called Gemini robotics on device, which brings powerful AI models directly to robots without needing access to the cloud. This is a new version of Gemini 1.5 Pro that locally runs on devices like robot arms, mobile robots, meaning it can understand instructions, plan complex tasks, and adapt in real time, all without calling back to those cloud servers. This is a pretty big deal for latency, for privacy, and operating environments with maybe spotty connectivity, all things I expect many useful instances of robots will need to be able to do. DeepMind showed off some pretty cool demos of this, robots identifying tools, plugging in USB cables, sorting objects, and even generalizing to unseen tasks, all run by this local Gemini model. And it does combine vision, natural language, and motion control into a singular model, which brings us closer to a more affordable general purpose robot in the real world. What do you think, Annie?
It feels like the tech is getting really close, which is great. I am not totally convinced that like human readiness for adoption is coming at the same speed that the tech unlocks are coming. And so I think that's the thing that I really am curious to see. How comfortable are people going to be having a robot in their home? I think you and I talked about this, like maybe if it doesn't have a human form, people might like it better, right? And so how do we experiment with the actual product side of things that make it so that users are comfortable with actually integrating it into their life is the unanswered question for me. But it seems like the tech is on track. The tech is looking good.
The humanoid form is a really interesting point, particularly for someone who just watched Terminator 2 with a pretty scary humanoid form robot or two. But, I do think if this were a pair of arms that could fold the laundry, or pack a lunch. You could put down the ingredients for a PB&J and or whatever, and it can make the sandwich, put it in a Ziploc bag, pack it in the lunchbox. It just looked like a pair of disembodied arms on, kind of like you're in a car factory sitting on my counter. Like, I'd be prone to dumping the laundry onto the table and letting it do the whole, fold the laundry and sort it into piles and whatever. Like, so I do think it'll be interesting to see if this comes out in the home first, or if there are more industrial commercial settings, flipping burgers in a restaurant or whatever, where you go, hey, this doesn't really bother me as much. And if it will be a full humanoid, which is obviously more flexible in what it can do, but also a little weirder in its experience having there versus saying, yeah, it's like a little box that's in the corner and we put our laundry in it when it comes out folded. We love it. And it's got a pair of arms or whatever. And it doesn't feel like, extra person and wandering around the house that you're supposed to talk to in some way.
Although I do think it would be a very interesting user research question to ask what is weirder, a full humanoid form or disembodied arms? Because that might have been my favorite phrase I've heard.
There you
But
go.
it's funny. I had a employee telling me one time what she was looking for in a new candidate, and I said, "What do you really need?" And she said, "I really need a pair of hands I don't need to hold." And I'm like, "Well, that's a disembodied arms. I just need a pair of
Disembodied
hands I don't have to
pair of
hold."
arms. Yeah.
Pair
Like
of
hands.
arms. Yeah, yeah. Or hands. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what comes of it.
I'm going to go from deep mind in robotics to deep mind in one of our favorite topics, which is biology in the world of genomics. So, DeepMind just unveiled AlphaGenome, a new AI system designed to help scientists better understand how changes in our DNA impact gene function and gene regulation. AlphaGenome can analyze long stretches of DNA, think about 100,000 different base pairs, and predict how genetic variations might affect how our genes are turned on or turned off, which is a critical insight for understanding diseases, drug development, things like personalized medicine. These models obviously build on DeepMind's past work with AlphaFold, but this time it's focused on decoding how the genome is regulated, not just what proteins it makes. And here's the kicker to me, I love this. AlphaGenome is already available through a public API for non commercial research use. So scientists everywhere can now be using this cutting edge AI to dig deeper into how our DNA really works and is expressed. And love that it's available for free use for non commercial research.
I do have to speculate though, like these types of technologies, like I still think the big winners are going to be big pharma because they have the advantage of like scale, knowing how to navigate regulations, monetize things, speed to market, all this type of stuff. So while I would love to see providers and startups really reap a huge benefit from this, I still think the major benefit is going to big pharma. What do you think?
I don't think these AIs are gonna change that. I think if anything, they can speed up our ability to identify new kinds of treatments, therapeutics, drugs. Whether or not the identification and the cheapening of the identification of such drugs has benefits that accrue to society, to providers, or to big pharma, I think is a little bit outside the AI area, and it's gonna come down to how we choose to structure our healthcare system. There is some real, I think, opportunity that if the cost of researching drugs comes down, if the cost of the initial R&D cost that drives the cost of drugs, particularly in America, where many of the pharma companies have to recoup that R&D cost primarily in developed countries and primarily in America, making drugs more expensive here. It does have the possibility to drive down drug prices, particularly here where we cover that R&D cost by reducing the R&D cost. But I do think we're more likely to see just an acceleration of discovery, but not a changing of the cost structure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as long as the average human gets the benefit, right, in terms of like earlier intervention on disease, prediction of disease, that type of stuff, I think that's really what we want to see AI unlock.
I think researchers, I always think in engineers where we've got, we talk about the coding tools and how there's a list of things you want to build longer than you ever have time. I think researchers are the same. They've got a list of things they want to research that's far longer than the time. And if we can speed up their ability to finish that research, then I think we're just going to unlock a lot of new discoveries, which should accrue maybe somewhat to big pharma, but also to humanity and patients in general if we have access to better medications more quickly. So I'm excited, but I agree there's a serious conversation to be had about who's going to get the value out of that.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving from advancements happening in the lab to maybe some happening right inside your favorite AI tool, Claude isn't just talk anymore, it's building. So, Anthropic just rolled out a new feature inside of its artifacts that lets users build actual AI powered apps directly inside the Claude chatbots. Not exactly vibe coding in your favorite development environment, but right inside the Claude chatbot. And we're not just talking about one off code snippets. This new capability builds a feature inside of artifacts that you can now describe an app you want to create, and Claude will write and preview the code right in an interactive workspace in the chatbot. And what's even more interesting, these aren't just toy apps. Early users have already built AI powered games, custom data tools, and even agent based workflows that call Claude multiple times to complete complex tasks. And you can interact with these apps in real time and even connect them to Claude through an API. And you can share your apps with others. This was kind of fun. And the usage gets billed to the user using the app, not the builder who built the app. So you can share with other Claude users. A clear incentive to start creating and distributing and playing with these Claude powered tools. It's available across free, pro, and max plans. So you go out there, start playing with this now. I thought this was pretty cool, moving to kind of an interesting world of building apps, not the vibe coding, which I've done a little bit of and still requires some real technical acumen, but just in the chatbot, here's I want a thing that does X, and it just builds it for you and lets you play with it.
Yeah, I love it. I think you said a couple weeks ago, like, design is the new software engineering or something like that, and I think that this type of thing is what's getting us closer to that, where the bottleneck is your own creativity and idea generation, not somebody actually bringing that to life, because you can use an AI like Claude to bring it to life. So, the limit is really your own creativity and what you can dream of building, and I think that that's really cool.
It reminds me of the whole vibe coding debate. People talk a lot about the vibe coding thing where you just kind of describe an app you want. It feels to me like the natural evolution of how we work with computer. I mean, forever, when you first got computers, you had to know exactly what buttons to, punch cards. If you ever watched the imitation game, the Alan Turing, they had like dials to twist to set up a program to run. And the whole evolution of computers has been going from people understanding how the computer works to understand how to get what they want out of it to people being able to work with the computer in a way that makes sense to you as a human, not to you as an engineer who built the computer. And this just feels like the next natural step in unlocking more capabilities that you can access the computer to do without having to learn how to do the computer's way of thinking, to think in that way, to speak in that language. And so it feels very natural to me, but very exciting because it really unlocks a lot of the capability that engineers have felt in computers for a long time to just everyday people who want to have an app that does something, and now Claude will build it for you.
I absolutely love it. I mean, how many times do you talk to somebody who's using a computer and they're like, "I just want this thing to do X," right? Like, whatever it is, and now you can go make that happen for yourself.
Make Claude do X for your whatever your X may be. And while we're speaking about tools getting better, God, it wouldn't be a normal week of what the AI unless there was something from OpenAI and ChatGPT. So they rolled out an interesting new feature today, this week, syncing up with your cloud drives. So ChatGPT just integrated a whole bunch more of your workspace tools. As of this announcement, Pro, Team, Enterprise, and EDU users can now connect ChatGPT directly to Google Drive, Dropbox, Box, Microsoft OneDrive, or SharePoint. And so you've been able to do that a little bit for deep research, but now you can actually conduct searches directly in your chats, normal chats with the chatbot, and it can search across and then reference materials in your drive. So I actually tested this out yesterday when I read this and just said, hey, can you pull up the rundown document and tell me about what we talked about in episode whatever? And it pulled up the document, found the right section, and said, here's what you guys talked about in that episode. So it was able to search across my Google Drive, find the document I was referencing without even having a name, and then actually pull content and use it in the context of a chat. So really cool if you're a user who's using one of these tools and want to use your LLM, your ChatGPT as a way to interface with all of the knowledge and content that you have. I thought a pretty cool update.
How was the, like, experience of that?
So there were two parts. One, you had to connect to the app, and then you had to wait for it to sync because it's doing some indexing so it can find the files that you want. And so there was a little bit of like not ready yet, ready to go. And then it slowed it down. Obviously, it's searching, it's making calls out to Google, it's searching across the data, but it did a great job of finding without my having to like go to Google, because you could before go to Google or SharePoint and find the file you wanted and upload it to a chat and go, talk to me about this file, summarize, whatever. But this was able to use natural language search to find the document I wanted, and then to actually feed it back to me. I'll be really excited when this gets access to my mail too, because so many of my pieces of information are mail. And right now, mail is still limited to the deep research capability. But for your documents, it's pretty great. So if you can you summarize what Annie said in her presentation last week about X? Like it'll pull the file, it'll actually link to the file so you can pull it up, and then it'll give you whatever summary or allow you to ask questions. So I thought this was actually really useful. It does slow things down a little bit because the search takes a little bit of time, so it's not as instantaneous. I'm sure that'll get better over time.
How did it compare to have you used similar functionality with the Gemini integrations with Google Docs?
I have, and I found it better. I mean, I've struggled with Gemini's integrations into Google Docs. I've struggled with the natural language search. I think it's getting better in the Gemini app where it will find stuff like this and can search across your docs. But this was pretty seamless to me, and it actually you're supposed to select the tool, like what data sources you want to, and it noticed in my query that I wanted a Google Doc, and then it like, "Do you want to turn that on for the?" And so kind of like your forgotten attachment kind of thing. It's like we're going to turn this thing on because clear you've asked. Because like, it was very clear, like I've got a file in my Google Drive. Can you find it? And it said, "Yeah, yeah." Let me turn that tool on, and reminded me to do that, and then did the query. So I found it better so far than the Gemini search, which is. I hate to say it, and I'm sure Gemini will be getting better, but I think ChatGPT still seems to be implementing product capabilities better than Google across even Google's own products like Gmail and Calendar and Docs. So